To see how this works, I'd like to have you watch a clip from Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West, released in 1969. The film is considered not only the greatest Italian Western, but also one of the greatest Westerns, period. The film subtly but overtly points out that the winning of the American West relied on political and economic corruption, violence, and the exploitation of people of color, as well as women, in stark contrast to the typical American myths of manifest destiny and blood, sweat, and tears in conquering the frontier. The clip is the final shootout scene of the film. To set this clip up, let me give you a quick plot summary. And it's a fairly complicated plot, so I'll be intentionally simplistic. The basic story revolves around the struggle over a piece of land in the Arizona-Utah region. Before the film starts, a prostitute from New Orleans named Jill, the woman you will see in the clip, has married a man who owns the land. At the beginning of the film, he has gone back to the property to wait for her. A train baron and his main henchman, Frank, want to take the land to control the railroads in the territory. So they kill the husband and his 3 kids before his new wife can arrive. In this clip, Frank is the man dressed in black. There are 2 other male characters of note. The one we see shaving is named Cheyenne, a career criminal from the region. The other is simply known as Harmonica. His name is never given. These 2 men start off as moderate rivals, but become allies when they recognize that Frank is trying to take advantage of Jill and intends to eventually kill her. After killing the train baron and picking off Frank's men, they have eventually forced a showdown between Frank and Harmonica. Throughout the film, Harmonica has been an extremely morally ambiguous character, killing 5 of Frank's men and refusing to give any information about himself. As you watch the scene, look for signs of racial and ethnic identity. Let me just add here that the actors who played Frank and Cheyenne, Henry Ford and Jason Robards, frequently played good guys, all-American types, so their roles in the film were somewhat against type. While the actor who played Harmonica, Charles Bronson, was an American of Lithuanian descent, he ended up playing Mexican characters in a number of European films before making it in American films. He was frequently cast in revenge or vigilante roles. Jill was played by Claudia Cardinale, a famous Italian actress who almost always played the love interest. Interestingly, in this film, she ends up being a shrewd businesswoman.
Keep your loving brother happy. Who are you?
Hopefully, you notice that harmonica is presented as an indigenous Mexican. So this scene represents a kind of revenge of an indigenous figure, a fighting back against white nationalist violence and mythology. Not a Native American as we might normally think of them, but an indigenous figure nonetheless. Throughout the film, Sergio Leone, the director, acknowledges the multiracial and multi-ethnic nature of the West in contrast to many American Westerns, which are primarily white-centered. The film contains many African Americans, Native Americans, Mexicans, and even Chinese characters, many of them being exploited or harmed by the rail baron, Frank, or by their allies. The film even ends with a more harmonious racial vision, because once Frank is dead, the film shows a multi-ethnic railroad construction crew, whites, African Americans, Native Americans, Mexicans, Chinese, all building the railroad, a symbol of the American West and American kind of power and strength, although it is admittedly hard to tell that from this screenshot. The subtext being that whites alone did not build the West, a not-so-subtle critique of the white-centered mythos of Western settlement. As a final point to this multi-ethnic vision, the last line of the end credits includes this acknowledgement. The producers are grateful to the Navajo Tribal Council for their hospitality in their territories in Arizona and Utah, a sentiment not expressed in traditional American Westerns, an acknowledgement of tribal sovereignty. All right, so while Once Upon a Time in the West and other spaghetti westerns may not have been explicitly native in their vision, they presented a version of America that was critical of the mythos of violence and white-centeredness that are the basis of those stories that we tell ourselves, about the history and mythology of America. This critique was crucial to the development of more authentic Native American representations in more recent films, especially as Native filmmakers began to tell their own stories. And I think, if I remember in the syllabus, you guys are going to start hitting some of those films where Native Americans get to kind of present themselves and talk about themselves. They're not controlled by the white mythos anymore. So hopefully this helped you kind of see that transitional moment in film and Native Americans.